Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. We have another review coming at you today, the FB5000. Now, what can be said more about this bench that hasn't already been said? There's already been really good reviews out there, but you can watch Gluck's review of the FB5000. You can watch Basement Brandon's review of the FB5000, as well as Garage Gym Lab. There's also other people that have done reviews of the FB5000. What's going to separate my review from theirs? Well, this is the first one that's on the FB5000, at least that I could find, with the wide pad. So when we're talking wide pad, what we're actually talking about is going from the standard about 12-inch pad to this 14-inch wide pad from side to side. Now, for some of you, that's going to be a little bit of a turnoff because at 14 inches wide, that means that it doesn't meet most powerlifting federations' general guidelines for a bench press. I will tell you, however, that besides the 14 inches wide, it is 48 inches from top to bottom or from head to butt. It sits 16.5 inches from the floor to the top of the pad. And there's about 3.25 inches of pad material. About 1.25 inch of that is actually plywood. On top of that plywood is a really nice foam with a really nice pad, so you're getting about 2 inches of foam and pad on top of that 1.25 inches of plywood. So just to reiterate, 14 inches wide is outside of competition specs, but every other dimension of this bench meets most powerlifting specifications. Now, the website claims that this bench weighs 70 pounds, and mine is really close to that at 72.5 pounds, which is really not outside of my expectations. That weight is super important though, especially when you consider that a 72.5 pound bench is able to withstand a claimed 1,000 pound capacity, although I was unable to actually test that for you guys here today. There are two rollable rollerblade style wheels. They're on the back side here, and they will help you when you're moving the bench and when you use the handle. That's over on the single post side. On that, it is a 3-post design, which means that you have a single top post and then 2 feet where the head goes. What this allows you to do is to get your feet into a really good position and better mimics what you might find in a powerlifting competition where there isn't necessarily going to be a foot that goes the full width here. The branding is actually really nice. It consists of a laser cut logo on this side as well as this side. Additionally, you have a rep white font on black background that is on each side. Now, the entire bench is a bolt together design. There are 2 bolts that attach this front foot to the main spine of the bench. And on the back one, it actually comes in 2 different parts where there's 4 total bolts. All of the bolts for the feet are a castle nut design, which are very, very easy to install with the provided tool. However, if you're like me, you hate the tools that come with benches. In order to adjust these ones, you'll need a 19mm socket or box wrench. As a quick note, if you try to use a socket on this front one, you're gonna run into a slight issue because the handle basically gets in the way. So you will need either a box style wrench or an adjustable wrench to get to that guy. So when your package arrives, it's going to come in a single box. And again, it's going to be 6 total bolts for the feet and 4 total bolts for the actual pad. There are 4 bolts. They are 17mm if you want to use your own tools, and they attach using some threaded inserts that are thrown into the 1.25 inch material that's on the back side of the bench. The bench pad itself is completely vinyl wrapped on the top, has that double bead that's going around the outside, and then also has this very nice bottom portion that is covered just to kind of keep the wood hidden and give it that really nice clean appearance. If you ask me, the 3x3 11 gauge material does lend its hand in making this thing look like a very stout and very solid bench, and it looks very much like most of the 3x3 11 gauge racks that most of us are using in our garage gyms. That's it for the description of the bench. What I wanted to work into now was covering some of the training notes that I've developed over the past 6 months of using this bench as my main bench in the gym. Now, for bench press, I love this bench. I really, really do. For me personally, I find that the extra width is really nice and accommodating. It helps support my scapulas and really kind of gives me that larger base for when I'm pushing what I would call heavy loads. I find the pad to be incredibly grippy, but not tacky, It's very comfortable and it's relatively easy to clean. Now, with the bench being a little bit wider than normal and with that being outside of competition spec, that doesn't really matter to me all that much, but I'm not a competitive power lifter. If you are a competitive power lifter, the rest of this review is going to still be something that's useful to you. Just keep in mind that instead of the FB5050, you'll be looking for the FB5000, which is the standard size pad. That pad is manufactured almost the exact same way, it's just narrower, and also meets all the competition specifications of most powerlifting federations. For bent over rows, I really like the bench as well. I prefer this bench to most adjustable benches for this movement because I can roll the weight under the bench to switch hands. The height from the floor to the bottom of the support is just over 9.5 inches, and I tend to use my hand towards the head of the bench, which has the 2 support pieces. Otherwise, if I put my hands on the other side, the bench tends to tip back and forth slightly. The bench material itself is designed to be very supportive during that type of movement when you're driving a single hand in, but one unfortunate side effect is that when you have chalk on your hands, the material design tends to hold a little bit of chalk, and there's still a little bit of that chalk that I can't quite get out of all the little small holes in the top of the material. Now, when it comes to hip thrusters, I'm really not that big of a fan of this bench. The nice thick pad is a nice enticing thing to do hip thrusters on, but what I find in practice is that the 3-foot design tends to cause the bench to rock back and forth slightly. I've never had the bench actually fall over doing the single-handed rows or doing the hip thrusters. However, it does sometimes rock, which can throw you off just a little bit when you're doing some of those movements and you're doing them heavy. And one other type of row that I tested them with is doing seal rows, and with a seal row, basically just doing a prone supported row. What I found is that the 3x3 material that the spine is made out of tends to get in the way. So unless you're using a specialty barbell that's designed to be used for seal rows, I find that the decreased range of motion really kind of takes away from that movement altogether. The last thing I wanted to talk about was moving the bench around the gym. The wheels, the handle, and the lightweight nature of the bench being at 72 pounds make it a dream to move around the gym, and really there's no reason to complain about moving around the gym except for just a couple little nitpicky things. First off, out of the box, the wheels actually come attached to the frame assembly. So I never adjusted the wheels until about a month after I got it. What I noticed is that when I would pick the bench up and try to move it around, it would kind of stick. It would still roll just fine, but it was just kind of sticky, and it made you be very deliberate with how you wanted to move the bench. What I ended up doing was just literally loosening those nuts by just about a quarter turn on each one, and now it moves freely back and forth and is realistically the easiest bench I've ever had in this gym to move around. The second thing with moving the bench around applies specifically to storage. Now, for most of us, I think that we tend to store our benches upright, like this. A chief complaint that I have when trying to store this bench upright is that the feet and where they're located is actually further down than the pad or this tricycle style gear. What that does is it causes the bench to sit at a slight backward angle. Now for me, my kids are regularly in the gym, and one thing I don't really like is how easy it is to just kind of push this bench over. It doesn't take much pressure, and trust me, a bench sitting vertically is very, very enticing to 3 and 6-year-olds. I do think it's a very easy fix, and it's actually something that Rogue has addressed in their bench of this same variety. And what they did is they took this rear horn and basically just extended it out so that it was flush with the back of the wheels. What this caused was the bench pad to not sit on the ground. Additionally, it sat level and caused the bench to be just a little bit more stable while in storage. I do know that there's probably some very easy DIYs out there to do that exact fix, but for the sake of this review, I didn't evaluate a DIY because I wanted to evaluate the bench as it comes to you from Rep Fitness. Those are all the training notes that I have to offer you guys from my extensive 6 months of training, and like I said, I did use this bench as my primary bench for about 6 months. In my opinion, the FB5000 series, that includes the FB5000 and the FB5050, is an absolutely outstanding bench and really an outstanding value to almost every single garage gym owner. It meets the competition specs, minus the width, as I talked about earlier with this specific bench. I personally find the bench to be very aesthetically pleasing. It has a nice grippy pad, moves around very easily, and is just a great garage gym bench. Now, if plain black is not really up your lane, this bench is also offered in a blue, a red, a different type of black that's kind of like a gloss black, as well as the brand new clear coat finishes that are coming from Rep Fitness. And again, those should be available, I believe, late 21, early 22. The big thing that makes this bench such a great value is the price tag. At $239.99, it's very, very difficult to beat this bench on quality, capability, and cost. It should be noted that the clear coat is going to run you about $70 more at $309, but even then with a specialty finish, that doesn't really break the bank for most people looking for a solid bench. Now, with a lot of training equipment, what I think a lot of people do is they buy the bench that they can afford now, and then later on down the road, they have the intent to buy a bench that better suits their goals. And I would say that if powerlifting is something that's important to you and flat benching is very important to you, and you don't really see yourself moving to an adjustable style bench at any point in time, that this isn't just a buy it for now type of item. This is probably a long-term investment in a good bench. At $239, having a long-term bench like that is outstanding value. When it comes to the pad design and the pad wear, I have been using this thing pretty heavily with me and some of the athletes that train at my gym, and I have yet to notice anything outside of a little bit of chalk buildup and just a couple of the holes. Other than that, there's been no body wear, there's no soft spots where like your chest or your scaps hit. It's still the exact same bench. If you leave something on this for a couple days, and you take it back off, there will be a slight imprint, but it takes just a matter of minutes and it raises right back out, and there's no memory to the pad. Now, like usual, I'm gonna give you guys kind of the near peer competitor, which I really think it's going to be Rogue Fitness. The Monster Utility Bench, if you configure it to be the wide pad and kind of the same height as this one, comes out to $345 plus shipping. Now that is for the Donnie Thompson fat pad, so it's not exactly, it's got that name brand to it, so you're gonna pay some extra money for that. But even then, $345 plus shipping, and again, this costs $239. The primary thing that most people will think about is that this is not made in the USA, and the Rogue Bench is. And like usual, I would say that if that is a priority that you have, then that is a fine priority to have, and buy the Rogue Bench all day. I have actually seen, used, and handled that bench, and there's certain parts of it that are just absolutely nicer, to include the front handle, as well as just kind of the I-beam look and the overall fit and finish of the whole thing. And like I mentioned earlier, the Rogue Bench is actually designed to be stored vertically, so you won't have to do any sort of DIY option if that's something that bothers you in your gym. What I ended up doing to store this one vertically is I basically just took the wheels and put them off the side of my platform and rested the pad on the platform, and it sat straight up and down just fine. Now the budget version of this, and this was really kind of a split hairs for me because there's a few other brands out there that make a similar style bench, but it wouldn't be a day in paradise if we weren't talking about Titan Fitness. One of the differences though, there's a couple different distances, but one difference is that it doesn't actually have the wide pad. It is the standard 12-inch pad. At the end of the day though, I really think that it's difficult to beat Rep, and I think that of this style bench, Rep really does have the best cost versus quality bench out there for you guys to have in the garage gym community. I have used all three. I've used the Titan Hefty Bench, I've used obviously the Rep Bench and the Rogue Bench, and I think that my favorite, if money wasn't an option, would be the Rogue Bench. But for most people, the things that I like about the Rogue Bench don't actually matter that much, in which case I think the Rep Bench becomes very attractive and probably the best flat bench on the market for the money. But that's been it for my review. I appreciate you guys watching every single time I make one of these things, and remember that when it comes to your garage gym training, you should always keep it better, awesome, and of course, badass. I'll see you next time.